Hi everybody, Chris here from Skeleton. So this video is part of an ongoing series, just giving kind of progress updates for Skeleton v3. Skeleton v3 being the next major version of Skeleton. So, I kind of mentioned series. The last video was actually kind of a big one for us. It was our first kind of pre-release announcement, which meant that you as a user can now install a new Skeleton. Just wanted to kind of give a quick shout out to everybody that's kind of left comments and kind of responded and asked questions and things like that. Been trying to do the best to kind of respond to that, and honestly, like, we got nearly 4,000 views on it in just a couple weeks, so that's huge for us because we don't really do a lot of promotion, especially kind of in these early release kind of stages. So all of that's just word of mouth. That's just you guys sharing things around. So sure do appreciate that, and hope everybody's been enjoying what they've had a chance to check out. We did have a few kind of follow-up questions that kind of came up as part of the release. So one of the questions that came up was people asking about whether or not we're going to support a CLI for installation. So if you come into the install instructions currently, you're going to see you have a choice to install either via Svelte Kit or via Next.js. And additionally, other options will appear here, in the near future. But if you look at the actual install instructions currently, they're it's manual instructions. You're doing step by step, and it's not the CLI that you may be used to in Skeleton v2. So to address that, we are thinking about this, but we're not quite sure how we're going to land with that. Any kind of tooling like that is always going to be at the tail end of our dev cycle. So, expect some updates on that maybe in the near future. So, the general idea is we're curious about it, we're interested about it, but we have so many different frameworks and meta frameworks that we're wanting to support that it makes it nearly impossible to build a proper CLI around that. So, there may be some considerations of, do we manage multiple CLIs, or do we just kind of stick with the manual instructions, or what? And just to kind of give you a little history, we originally created the CLI to address some of the issues with, it being very difficult to onboard and create a new project with Skeleton early days, pre-release V1, that kind of time period. That has changed, dramatically since then. We've really smoothed out a lot of the onboarding process. It's much, much simpler. It's just a handful of steps. You can kind of see them on the screen here. It's really not a hard process compared to what it used to be. So really the role of the CLI has shifted. And so we're kind of discussing it internally. It may or may not return. Just wanted to address that real quick. The other thing was some folks pointed out, if you look at the documentation on mobile, it's not quite responsive. Some stuff doesn't quite fit right. We're aware. It's part of an in-development process. We're kind of waiting on a couple things. We're waiting on the floating UI Svelte library to kind of get to a certain point where we feel comfortable integrating that with the documentation site. So, just things like that. We want to kind of dog food our own tools and build some of that in here, but we're just kind of waiting on some of that stuff to get finalized. So expect improvements around that in the future, in addition to content inside of the documentation and things like that too. The other thing that kind of came up was some folks had some issues with creating custom themes. If you come in here and look at the output of the theme generator, before today, let's call it today, if at the time you're watching it, this was not outputting the proper format. It was kind of a format we were leaning towards, and we've kind of taken a couple steps back from. It may still change between now and release, but we've at least kind of got the output where it's one-to-one. You copy this, you follow the instruction, the documentation, everything should work. Just a couple of errors on our part, and that should be patched up by the time you watch this video. So again, just a few things. Again, thank you for checking these things. Thank you for trying out Skeleton v3, and please keep the feedback like this coming, because this helps improve the library, and it helps improve the experience for other users. So very, very valuable stuff. So please do that. The thing I wanted to cover was we now have some updates to the documentation itself, namely site search. So if you search for, accordion, you'll see not only like the result for the page, but any sort of instance that might occur on multiple pages. So over on the animation section here under components, the contribution, we mentioned the accordion, so it gets a little shout out, it gets a little link there. And so you can either deep link to that section or to whatever kind of topic you're looking for. You can also refine, so you can click the little button here and maybe choose, hey, I'm only looking for things related to React, only things related to Svelte, or all frameworks, or only your preferred framework. And the preferred framework is selected by default. And in case you're curious how that works, if you actually view any component or anything like that, it's the little toggle here. So as you change tabs, it'll just kind of persist that in the site. It'll always know what your last option that you picked, and that's what it'll keep the search relevant against. We'll tweak that, make that a little friendlier in the future, but just know that is a couple options that do exist for you. The other kind of big improvement I wanted to show is the new gradient section. So if you come under the Tailwind section, you're going to see gradients here, and that is adding a couple new additional ways to use gradients in Tailwind. So think of it as an extension to Tailwind as opposed to us providing like canned options or something like that. You might be familiar with using gradients in Tailwind. They have these kind of like gradient stop options where you can come in here and you kind of specify, the direction that the linear gradient is going to go, like what is the start and end tones or middle tones, what are the stop positions, things like that. And so there's, some nice options for linear gradients, but what's always kind of been lacking with Tailwind is for some reason they've never included radial options. And so now as part of Skeleton, you get that stuff for free. And so if we look at the source, it's a very simple add. It's just adding a couple additional options just kind of built into your Tailwind config based on our plugin that just adds, gradient and conic options for CSS. The really cool thing about this is that these are just plug and play with all the options that you know from any kind of standard linear gradient. So the syntax for the start and end. So you do from, via, and to, just like you would a linear gradient. The only difference here is, again, instead of a set direction, you just specify radial, and it works. So very, very simple, very, very familiar. Same thing with conic. You just do the conic option, and then your from, to, and via options there, and that will display that. You can have defined color stops. So these options that are shown in the Tailwind config, all of that sort of thing works one-to-one. Syntax exactly that's shown on the docs there works really well. So just to kind of show a couple demos here, we've pulled up a couple examples. So you might use this to kind of create like a simple spinner. In this case, we just create a conic gradient that starts at transparent, goes to I think it's primary color there, and then we use the built-in animate spin option from Tailwind, which just makes that little element spin. So yeah, there's a cool kind of use case for that. Likewise, we've showed how to kind of apply this as like a kind of a clipped-in gradient inside of a like text or something, which might be cool for like headers or some kind of text like that. Syntax is very similar to what you might be expecting on the way it kind of you can define any kind of text here, any kind of styling, any kind of gradients that you want, and then just making sure we're using the Tailwind primitives to actually kind of clip that in properly. So just a quick example of how that works. We do give a shout out to the stops and the positions there, so if you're curious to kind of link over and see this documentation I was showing over here, that's provided right on this page. And then kind of one more note, if you are a React user, if you're coming from like the Next.js world, when you set up a new Next project and you choose Tailwind as part of one of the kind of setup options, it will automatically install Tailwind for you. It actually goes ahead and installs and sets up these same sort of conic and radial styles for you. And so that's actually the source that we've used. We're just kind of copying that, building that straight into the Skeleton plugin so that this is available for anybody using Skeleton, not just folks that are on Next.js or on React. If you're on Svelte or insert other framework, this will work for you. So just a really cool addition. Just means that, the options that Next.js provides are redundant. You're welcome to remove those. Up to you. It won't cause any harm if you leave them there. Okay, so that's gradients. The other kind of big addition this week is this is a brand new component here we've added called the switch. And so I think in V2 we called this like slide toggle. It had kind of a funky name, but general idea is it's just a small little UI element for toggling like a checked, like a checkbox state. There are some kind of movements, kind of being made in the browser world and the browser vendors to try to standardize this. but who knows how many years that might be down the line. So for now, we're continuing to provide a component around this. It works and looks very similar to the V2 version, just with kind of that new aesthetic style that we've been kind of talking about over and over with V3. So if I click it, you're going to see kind of a quick toggle. You can put it into a list. You can continue to have a disabled mode or a disabled style for this. Kind of a nice addition for, over V2 is we're now letting you kind of set the icons for either state, so kind of the on and off state. So if we toggle this, not only do we get color in this case, we also get icons that show there. There's also like a compact mode, as we're calling it, where you just apply a small little attribute here, a little property here, and it will actually make that just kind of a almost replacing an actual checkbox, just with all the style customizations you might be used to. No like sliding toggle or anything like that, but the different states, you can use different icons between that, and it's a nice way to control that. The width is flexible for all of these, but especially in the compact mode, you might, if you're targeting like mouse and desktop users, you might make that a little smaller, and then on mobile, you might make that a little bit larger, so finger size can reach that and touch that. We're also showing kind of a more complete example here, where we're kind of utilizing all the bells and whistles that the switch provides. So using this to actually create a light switch toggle, which we're going to probably integrate into our doc site here very soon. But, something very similar to the V2 light switch that you might have been used to, the component we called, in V2. I'm just showing you kind of a complete example of what that might look like. So let's go over to the Svelte version just to help some folks out here. So implementation is very similar to what you might expect. We can come in here and look at the source for the main one. You can actually use a state rune to kind of bind the value. So that kind of controls that, whatever value variable you define here, you set state as a true false by default. You bind that to the checked state for the component, and that's how you kind of get that two-way binding between the component. So if you need to do that, the other kind of cool thing is embedded inside of the component is an actual kind of hidden checkbox element. So if you're using this kind of switch inside of a reactive form, like inside of a Svelte form, it will just automatically work as you would expect an actual input to work. And so that's why you might see like, oh, you're defining an ID, and oh, you're defining a name, very similar to like an input right, and that just ensures that all of that works. Additionally, we also have a kind of an event handler for knowing when the toggle happens or when something changes there, and it will just, of course, return back the state. So if you're kind of curious to see, what that looks like, we've got a very very simple example. A couple of those settings are opt-in, such as like you don't have to have the event handler every time. But, just wanted to show you kind of a complete example there. You're welcome to kind of poke through the code for the other examples to see more kind of a complete examples of what those look like. You can see for the Svelte side, we are using the new snippet syntax for Svelte 5. So instead of slots, we've now moved to snippets, which operate in a very similar manner. And that in this case handles the icons, so you can switch between the icons. We show the compact mode and light switch. And again, I won't go through all the code just for the sake of time today, but definitely encourage you to kind of go through and poke through those because there's some really cool stuff in there. Another kind of quick shout out, we're not really covering floating UI Svelte as part of the V3 updates. It is its own separate project. So if you haven't already, definitely recommend you come and view the website address here at the top. Definitely kind of check the Git, the Git updates or announcements or anything like that for any kind of updates to this. But did want to just kind of give a couple quick shout outs. First of all, Hugo, who is the pretty much the main developer right now on the project. He has been featured on This Week in Svelte, which is the weekly screencast provided by the Svelte Society. So if you are curious to see that, I'll try to remember to put that a link into the video description here. So if you want to go check that out, you can. We also have site search, similar to the V3 docs, coming very soon, and a new use focus hook coming very soon as well. So look for a brand new feature being added very soon as well. So we're going to try to get that as part of today's release. Depending on how some things fall, it may or may not make it in time. Just a heads up on that. Other than that, the only thing, kind of returning back to Skeleton, I do want to kind of shout out that, hey, we do still have quite a lot of things to do. This was kind of a question that came up as part of the pre-release last time, which was, what does this mean? Where are we in the process of things? And so the best way to kind of illustrate that is just to come onto our repository here, look at the Issues tab, click Milestones, and hit V3 here. This provides a running list of all of the tasks that we're tracking and working on to kind of deliver Skeleton V3. And as you can see, it still looks like numerically quite a lot. The good news is a lot of the big issues, the big overhanging, like foundational issues, have now been nailed down, have been solved, and have been put out there. That's why that's what enabled us to be able to do the pre-release. But the next couple weeks, let's call it month even, I'll probably be putting more focus into actually delivering more components. So we have a ratings component coming up very soon. The switch component is obviously shipping, today, this week. Progress radials, radio groups, all these additional components that you know and love from V2. We still need to port those over to Svelte 5 and React. And so that's where we are in the process. Those are going pretty smoothly. The switch is the first kind of example of that, the ratings component very soon. But, do want to kind of let you know that we're kind of getting in that process, getting in that flow of finally kind of knocking out those individual features that you may be waiting for. So if you're kind of curious where that is in the flow, note that everything kind of listed on this kind of milestone is kind of in a priority list. So any items towards the top, you'll probably see those worked on or finished earlier. Anything towards the bottom, maybe a little bit later on. So just if you're curious. Likewise, if you are somebody that wants to contribute to V3, we are still actively looking for contributors to kind of jump in and help. The only thing we ask is you have some knowledge of Svelte 5 and React. So if you're looking to jump into that, maybe go kind of start there, and then whenever you feel comfortable, reach out. And we have plenty of issues to work on, plenty of things to kind of, features to kind of build, and we would love to help. So if you're interested, just reach out on GitHub in the issues themselves, or even just, ping us on Discord or something like that. So we're around and available to help for any of that. Other than that, please enjoy, and again, look forward to some more updates in the next update. And again, thank you for all the support so far, and we hope you are enjoying everything you're seeing.